Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Farmers Insurance Open, aka Tiger Week. DraftKings picks and preview, and it's going to be notable for the DraftKings picks this week because we got a lot of large Tiger-fueled GPPs back on the slate. You know, a $4 with $100,000 to first prize. These are the tournaments that we all wanted. Now we got them, so let's try to go win some, or at least place in some, and get some of that Tiger money coming back to us. Joining me on the line to break this all down, the host of the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast and of PowerHourPod.com, Kenny Kim. What's up, dude?
Pat, what's up, man? Always a pleasure to be on the show. Looking forward to this week, man. Big week of Tiger coming in. We're very excited about it.
All right, I'm going to get to Tiger in a second. The one thing that I do want to mention to the peoples, you can check out Monday's show with Jeff Feinberg, where we broke down more of the betting aspects of everything and talked about the field, the course, everything like that. That's up on the DraftKings YouTube page right now. Sub to that or subscribe to the audio podcast. And do not be afraid to, A, give a like, because that's super easy to that one and this one, and leave a review, preferably 5 stars. 4 will do, 5 is preferable. But Tiger Woods, let's really get into this right away. I'm looking through my stats on FantasyNational.com right now. His recent form, not the greatest, but if you search back through all-time rounds, Tiger really rates highly in a lot of the key numbers that you're looking for this week. But he comes in at a super elevated price. The entire DFS Twitter community is talking about how this is a ridiculous price. There's no need to use Tiger. Now, I'm on board with that. And if I lose all my money because Tiger ends up winning, I'm fine with it. I love Tiger. I want to see him do well, but I'm not putting my bankroll behind that statement at $9,700 when you can have Leishman or Cantley for less money, which seems kind of nuts at this point. But I'm looking at the projections right now from FantasyNational.com, which takes an aggregation of all the people who use the site and favorite, and his projection right now is at 3.5%. I think that is going to be a wild error because I still think that in that giant $4, Tiger ends up over 10% owned. What do you think that the ownership for Tiger is going to be this week?
Yeah, I'm thinking somewhere between 12 and 15%. You got to think that, you know, there's no football this week. The GPPs are sort of large. You're going to get a lot more casual fans playing instead of the hardcore, you know, PGA DFSers that are out there. So I think his number can be definitely inflated. I don't know. I mean, the more you think about it, and the more people talk where they're not going to roster him, could that have an opposite effect? I mean, there's going to be some fans out there that want to play him, and they're like, oh, well, Tiger's going to be 3, 4, 5%. You got to play him. I don't think it's going to be that low.
Yeah, neither do I. Like you mentioned, I think there's enough casual interest this week without football on the go and a lot of people moving their money over to a different sport that know Tiger, want to take Tiger, are excited about Tiger. I'm excited about Tiger too, but there is a 0% chance that he ends up in any of my lineups this week. Are you going to roster him at all?
No, I mean, you got to think about it. At $9,700 to make value, he's got to finish probably around top 10, right, on DraftKings at that price. I don't see that happening. I mean, if it happens, I mean, you know, we're all aboard the Tiger train. It's going to be a hell of a year. But I don't think a top 10 at this difficult course, even though he's had success here. Because when he had success here in the past, he was the longest hitter on tour, and he hit a bunch of fairways. You know, he's still long, as we saw at the Hero, but the fairway part is going to be a little bit worrisome. From what I've read from his few holes that he's played today during practice rounds, he looks healthy. He's been hitting the ball out of the rough, you know, hitting it hard. He's been looking fine. So, you know, maybe health-wise is the big issue that we want to worry about Tiger, so he just makes it through the whole year. But honestly, I think if he makes the weekend, that's a win for him and a win for everyone because, especially the TV coverage, you get 40 Tiger. You know, CBS and Golf Channel wants that.
Let's go to the top of the board then. The real elite players that you should be building all your cores around, and you go to the very top, defending champ and last week's winner, Jon Rahm, is the most expensive guy. He's followed by Ricky Fowler right below him, still in the 11K range. Then it's Hideki, and then it's Justin Rose. I think that there's enough wiggle room this week. Well, I don't hate a balanced approach because I think there are some nice middle tier guys. You could potentially roster 2 of these guys in your lineup. You don't have to, but you could if you wanted to. If you were to start your teams with one of those 4 guys, which one of the 4 is it?
I mean, it's got to be Rahm, right? I mean, the guy's coming off a win last week. He came in second the tournament before he played, where it was the Tournament of Champions, I think. He came in second, and he won the previous event before that. He's hot. From what I read, if he wins, he overtakes Dustin Johnson as the #1 player in the world. The one worry I have probably with Rahm is I don't know if the tee times have been coming out yet, but I figure he's going to play with Tiger. And that whole, you know, craziness involved with the Tiger gallery can maybe get in Rahm's head just a little bit, because we've seen him be a little bit of a hothead towards fans who don't respect everything that happens when you're at the golf course with cell phones and, moving during the shots. He gets a little bit irritated sometimes. So that's one little downfall for him. But I think when I've seen him in the last few rounds, it seems like he's gotten better at that. So, I mean, Rahm seems like the play up top, number one wise.
I'm with you on Rahm. The problem for me is the pricing that comes along with it and the projected ownership that he's probably going to end up being plus 20% just based off A, recency bias, B, he's the number 2 player in the world and the best ranked player in the field, and C, he won here last year. So everything is sort of pointing towards it. Plus, when we talk about the key stats and what's important here, you're going to take distance, you're going to take strokes gained off the tee and guys that are good with long irons, and that's essentially Jon Rahm's game. He is the best suited player in this field for this tournament. So listen, I'm in on Rahm. I'm going to be using him a lot, probably around 35-40%, but I am going to mix and match with some of the other guys at the top. So if it's Rickie, Hideki, or Rose, I'm going Rose over those guys with probably just a bit of a sprinkle of Rickie, because I don't want to miss out. And people might look at his course history and say, hey, he has 3 missed cuts the last 4 years here. Although he's not coming back from the Middle East this time around, that could benefit him a little bit. He did open his career with 5 straight cuts made in 2 top 10s at this event when he was a lot younger. So I can see the case for Rickie. I prefer Rose, though.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm just struggling between those two. I mean, those two are probably the next 2 that I'm going to use up top over Hideki. Rose does have, the thing coming back from the Middle East, and we've seen in the last couple of years that does have a detriment, could have a detriment to the guy's game. But we saw it, a couple months ago. He went from Hong Kong to the Bahamas in back-to-back week. Not quite as long of a journey, not quite as bad as the jet lag, but he still performed well when he played at the Heroes in Bahamas, even though it didn't really mean that much. So maybe that's something you can look at. I like Rose too. I mean, the guy's been playing out of his mind, except for last week. It was the first time he was outside the top 10 in, 10 tournaments or some crazy number like that. But I mean, I think he looks good. He's good off the tee. He's good around the greens with these small greens at Torrey North. There's going to be some missed greens. You got to get it up and down. So I'm definitely a fan of Rose this week.
When I look at the ownership projections right now, it just seems like all the ownership is going to consolidate on Rickie, on Rahm, and on Rose, and that's going to make Hideki Matsuyama the potential GPP pivot play here if people wanted to go that route. Hideki doesn't have the greatest history at this event. Obviously, he kind of peaks next week in Phoenix, where he just rolls on everyone every single year. But is there any interest in Hideki if you were to, let's say, lower your exposure in terms of Fowler and Rose and just move a lot of it onto Hideki, knowing that you're going to be overweight on the field, even if you have 15%?
I mean, I got more faith in Rose and Rickie. Hideki just doesn't seem like he plays his course exceptionally well, which doesn't make too much sense because he's a pretty good driver of the golf ball. I mean, he's fairly long, fairly accurate, but he just had his issues here, and I'm not the biggest fan of him.
All right, and then next level down, actually, let's talk about key stats for a second. When I kind of just briefly threw it out there just a little bit in terms of what I'm looking for, I'm really focusing on the Fantasy National stats, strokes gained, ball striking. You can find a list of everyone, how they've performed over the past 12, 36, 50, 100 rounds if you go to my cheat sheet or article up on dkplaybook.com, or just become a sub of Fantasy National. You can sort through all these stats yourself and figure out where you really want to put your focus at. But that combines off the tee and approach. I mix that in with driving distance. There's a bunch of par 4s right now that measure in between 450 and 500 yards. There's 5 on the north, 5 on the south. Those are difficult holes. They don't need to be scoring holes for a lot of guys, but they cannot be the holes where you just give away all the strokes that you make on the par 5s, which I do think is important here. Like, the winning score is probably going to venture into the double digits, which means that the par 5 scoring is going to be a little bit tricky, that you're going to need to make birdies there somewhat consistently to pad your birdie stats and make sure you don't give them away on the harder holes. So what are you looking at for key numbers here?
Yeah, par 5 scoring makes sense. I mean, if you look, the last 6 golfers who won here, they've averaged around 8 under on the par 5s for the week here. So it looks like, the winning scores have been like -9, -10. So, I mean, the majority of the scoring for the winners have come on the par 5s. So it seems like that's going to be important. Of course, off the tee is important here. I'm looking at the 450 to 500 yard par 4 proficiency as well. Long iron play, proximity from 175 to 200 plus, looking at that as well. Also, strokes around the green. There's going to be some missed greens here, especially if the wind picks up a little bit, which they say it might on Thursday afternoon, but we'll see.
Yeah, so somehow we're going to run through all of this. We're going to take the bombers. We're going to take the guys who score on the long holes, and somehow Brandt Snedeker is just going to win again.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is in that next range, right?
He is in that $9,000 range. Like Tiger leads it off, and then you're looking at Brian Harman, Patrick Cantlay, Jason Day, Mark Leishman, and Brandt Snedeker as all the $9,000 players. For me, in that range, I'm just going to skip over Tiger. Cantlay is one of my favorite plays of the week. He's more or less setting up like Rahm did at this course last year, but he's much further along in his development than Rahm was 12 months ago, which is really crazy to think, considering if he wins, he's the #1 player. So I like Cantlay, and I like Leishman a lot here. I think that after everyone kind of pushed on him at Tournament of Champions, then he was one of the highest priced guys at Sony, and he didn't perform up to expectations. People are kind of dwindling off a little bit. And then you see the name Jason Day, 9,400 right there, knowing he's a past winner of this event, knowing what his upside is, although he hasn't played in like 3 months. I think that Jason Day might suck away some of the ownership from Leishman, and I think that makes him a really nice play, especially if the wind picks up.
Yeah, Cantlay, we're on the same page here. Once again, Cantlay, Leishman, they're going to be my 2 favorite plays. Leishman's actually going to be probably my highest priced golfer in cash lineups this week. He said in interviews how much he enjoys the course. We've seen him play well here in the past. Cantlay is that rookie. He played here in 2013 and missed the cut, but I mean, he's a much different golfer now than he is then. I think he's definitely playable. It's a fade for Harman for me. I think this course is a little bit too long for him. Jason Day, I'm not the biggest fan coming in with a new caddy. He had to deal with some off-the-course issues during the break here with what happened to his wife, a sad story. And then I think the sneaky play here is Brandt at $9,000. You know, he was pretty popular last week at $7,700, and he killed some people. And usually when that happens, it lowers the ownership for the next week, and especially if there's a price increase. I think Snedeker could be one of the lower-owned guys in this 9K range. He's a 2-time champ, if I'm not mistaken here. So, I mean, if you can get back on track, you know, if he's single-digit owned, you only need 15 or 20% of him to be double the weight on the field. I think he's worth a flyer in GPPs this week. Yeah,
I'm looking at Brandt as well. He's definitely going to make my lineups. I probably won't be super overexposed, but right now when I'm looking at the Fantasy National ownership projections, he's sub 10%. Now, he has been undercursed, so that's always something to pay attention to. But if people
didn't know that one.
Yeah, that's Tim's one-and-done pick this week. But I just think it makes some sense, too, though. Like, I was one of the people that was invested in Brandt Snedeker last week just because I felt like he was undervalued. But it was nice to see him have that solid finishing round, 5 under, at a very easy La Quinta course. I mean, he doesn't get a ton of credit for that, but it was nice to see him make some birdies again. If he can get his game rounding back into form to where it was even this time 2 years ago or this time last year before the injury set in, then I think that he is going to be a very sneaky GPP player, and I will be using him in the lineups.
Yeah, I'm with you on Snedeker. I'll be using him in GPPs this week.
All right, in the $8,000 level, when we drop down, Phil leads it off at $8,900. Then it's Sugar Shane Lowry, Tony Finau, Gary Woodland, Ollie, Reed, CH3, Cameron Smith, Xander, Grayson Murray. For me here, there's only 2 guys that I'm super interested in when it comes to thinking about who are going to be my core guys here. And I'm definitely going overweight on Shane Lowry, and I'll be having a ton of Xander Schauffele, who, for whatever reason, people have just forgotten about. He did the gear change. His irons were awful at Kapalua. They were much better at the Sony. He is one of these guys that drives it a ton, gains a ton of strokes off the tee. And hey, I think we might have forgotten that, you know, he won 2 tournaments last year. He's a real player in this field, and I think he's underpriced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of this whole range. Xander does make sense with his propensity to hit the ball well off the tee. I mean, you're right. People seem to have forgotten about him. I think his ownership shouldn't be that high. I do like Xander a lot. I mean, a lot of these guys I like in this range. I like the 2 chalk picks up top. I mean, Tony Finau, Gary Woodland. I'm a fan of both. The thing about Finau is he, you know, even though he plays well at this course, he's improved every year that he's played here. It's all about, you know, he hits it long enough. His big thing is the putting, right? It seems like he has switched his putting grip again. He used to be left-hand low. Now he's the normal conventional grip. And since he's changed, small sample size, but it looks like he's improved. I think he's gained strokes putting in 4 of his last 5 tournaments played. His game seems well-suited for this course. Also, Woodland, another guy who's spoken about how much he loves this course, how much it suits his game. You know, he can hit that little bit of a cut off the tee with his driver, which will help because a lot of the holes dogleg from left to right. He's great with his long irons. Actually, he's only one of 3 golfers in the field ranked inside the top 20 in proximity from 175 to 200 and proximity from 200 plus in the last 50 rounds. And you're looking at like 45% of all approach shots coming from that range. So I sort of like those 2 guys. I do like Shane Lowry a lot for GPPs as well. Seems to play well on difficult courses.
Yeah, he plays well. He plays well at long courses, difficult courses, and he tends to bring his better games up against stiffer competition, and this is a very strong field. Woodland, for me, is tough because despite being a bomber in the very classical sense, he tends to play better at shorter courses that turn into birdie fest. Well, he's never missed the cut at this event. He only has 1 top 10. He had a T10 like 4 years ago. I just look at the other names around him, whether it be Lowry, Finau, or Scheifele. I'm just much more inclined to take those guys and throw more of roster combinations of that trio into my lineup before going to Gary Woodland. So I'll be on the Gary Woodland fade train.
Gotcha. What about Ollie? What do you think?
I just feel like everyone's going to be on Ollie. And just, I'm never really a big Ollie guy, and I want to wait for the switch back to Bermuda. Once we get into the Florida swing, I think I'm going to start dialing up Ollie a little bit more, but I think this might be just a little too much for him.
I like Ollie, but the problem I have with him is, the trajectory of his shots a little bit lower than most other golfers. Like, you see him hit that crazy stinger that's like 12 feet above the ground, which is one of the most beautiful shots that you can see on a golf course. But, he doesn't necessarily hit the ball that high. And on the North Course, hitting the ball high is definitely going to be a little bit more of an advantage hitting it into these greens.
$7,000 level, is there anyone that sticks out from you right away? Because I like a pair of guys at $7,700. One is Peter Uihlein. The second is Johnny Vegas. I prefer Vegas a little bit more, but I think those are the sort of skill sets that I want to target here.
Yeah, Vegas is one of my favorite players. I'll be rostering him a bunch. I know he's been seeing some sports psychologists here recently. Him and his coach Kevin Craig have been working on his game a lot. The thing that he's been working on with him is trying to get Johnny to realize that he's a good golfer. He belongs in this upper echelon, that he's elite. I think the biggest thing that helped Vegas was his win against Spieth in the President's Cup. I think that sort of made him realize that he belongs. He's a top tier golfer, and you've seen it in his last couple of performances. Tournament of Champions, loaded field, top 7, 11th last week. This is the course that he has played well at. It seems to suit his game really good. Another guy who's top 20 in proximity from 175 to 200 and 200 plus. Good with his long irons, good with the long par 4s. Yeah, I definitely like Vegas, especially at this price of split.
Yeah, so the guys that are in between that are falling through the cracks a little bit, like no one wants to use Patrick Reed after his brutal performance last week at La Quinta. And then you have like Cam Smith, who if things do get a bit windy, you talk about long irons around the green, good and win. Cam Smith, someone who was very popular like 2 weeks ago. Now you see a price drop and no one really wants him anymore. I found that kind of surprising. Charles Howell III is someone who just historically plays really well here. I'm not really big on him this week, but I know that people will go that way. What about Grayson Murray? $8,000. I found somewhat surprising because he is sort of the mold of player that you want. The one thing that he's not doing right now is scoring on par 5s, which is something you have to do this week. But I just don't know what I want to do with Grayson, considering he's sandwiched in between 3 or 4 other guys that I really like. Is he a potential guy that just falls through the cracks here?
Yeah, I thought about him, but I like Xander better. Just a little bit more refined of a game, as you saw what he did at the Tour Championship last year. Murray's game should fit, longer hitter, hits a lot of birdies, good with from over 200 yards. So, I mean, it would make sense, but I like Xander better at this price.
All right, then you have the next 3 below, Colley, Steele, and then Alex Noren coming over from overseas, playing in this event, one of the top-ranked players in the world and one of the top-ranked players in this field. Feels like a misprice for Alexander Noren and Colley. When you look at his odds versus his DraftKings price, he's 35-1, dropped to 40 now after a day of betting, but still, he seems like an outlier in terms of his betting odds versus his DraftKings price. I think that he might end up being super chalky, and I can't get a grip on Noren. Like, he hasn't played in a while. He did play in the Eurasia Cup, but can you pull the trigger on Noren here? Like, am I being a bit too fancy by taking Uihlein over Noren when I know that Noren's the better player?
I can't really take. I mean, Noren, what does he have? Like in his tournaments played in America, he has 1 top 10.
Yeah.
In his career. I mean, I think only 2 top 20s in his career on American soil. It just doesn't seem like his game translates over here. even though he does play well over in Europe. I don't mind Uline. I could see playing him. The skill level is there. He hits a ton. I like Steele up top. I think he's going to be a popular play. Tee to green, he's great. Actually, if you look at it, Bud Colley's tee to green's probably been a little bit better than Brendan Steele here lately. He's been really dialed in with his approaches. So, I could see merit for using both of those guys.
Do you think that Steele will end up being more popular than Colley? Because I think that Colley might devolve into the chalk. It depends on how big people end up going with Xander, but I can see them being like, oh, I can save $200. I can save $300 by dropping down to this level. Maybe they'll bypass Scheifele and just go to Colley and Steele.
I mean, it could. Steele has that more of a name brand to him. I mean, Colley's still up and coming. I mean, for the guys who have been playing DFS for a while, we all love Bud Colley. We know his game. But once again, there's going to be those casual fans, and Steele has a little bit more name recognition, also from California, very used to these courses.
All right, the rest of the $7,000 level, you have like Jimmy Walker, Kim mixed in there as well. I mean, always more of a betting guy for me with Siwoo Kim than playing him on DraftKings, although he has been gaining a ton of strokes off the tee recently, which is kind of crazy. Lahiri's in this mix. Aaron Wise, who is another player who just can really get it done off the tee, $7,600. Another, not necessarily a local guy, but a California guy. Then you drop into like Kirk and Spawn, Julian Surrey from the Euro Tour, $7,500. Another big bomber. I think I like him more next week, now that he's committed to the field at the Phoenix Open, or the Waste Management Open, sorry. It might be a nice spot to get on track, but I'm glad that he's going to be playing this week. Streelman's been gaining a ton of strokes tee to green. Kyle Stanley should have won this tournament in the past, gagged it away on the back nine on a Sunday to lose to Snedeker. Scott Stallings has won before. There's a lot of options in the $7,000 area below $7,700. Do you have any guys right away you're just like, yep, that guy, and that guy?
I like going back onto the Spawn train personally. I mean, he burned people. Another guy who burned people last week, who was very, very popular, who seems like his game could be suited for this, with a top 10 last year here at Torrey Pines. I do like Kevin Streelman. His tee to green game here recently has been top notch. I think, if you consider ball striking a stat, like the PGA version of ball striking, he's been top 30 in ball striking the last 6 or 7 tournaments he's played. And that's a combination of total driving and greens and regulation. So he's been striping the ball there pretty well. Stanley makes sense. I mean, yeah, he did choke that away. What was he up? 3 strokes going into the final hole and shot an 8 as a tie, and Brandt Snedeker beat him in the playoffs. So that is brutal. But again, another guy, tee to green, not the lengthiest guy, but he is accurate off the tee. So if you're not going to have a whole bunch of length here, you got to hit a lot of fairways just to be able to hit a lot of greens, because the rough is a little bit gnarly here. So those are the 3 guys that sort of stand out to me. I also like Molinari, just as a consistent guy. Another guy who's off the tee game, relies basically on accuracy. I mean, he's not the longest guy, but he's 17th in strokes gained off the tee here in the last 50 rounds. Really good approach shot too. So tee to green, he's there. It's just going to come to putting with him.
The thing with Molinari at this course is it's almost the same thing like with Herman at the very top and Snedeker in a lot of ways, where they're going to be accurate, they're going to gain strokes tee to green, and if the putter doesn't show up, they're not going to have an easy time scoring on some of these par 5s as some of the longer hitters do. Their game needs to be far more flawless than some of the bombers who can just length their way out of a lot of problems. And I think when you look at the betting odds versus the DraftKings price, where you see Molinari in the world rankings versus his price and the other guys around him, I just think that his ownership is going to skyrocket to the point where I just don't want any interest in GPPs.
I'll be using them in cash. There's no doubt about that, but I can see your point for GPPs.
The other guys that are right around here, JB Holmes has an excellent track record at this course, almost the prototypical player that you would want here. The bomber, good with long irons. He can get a hot putter on POA every now and then. He hasn't really been playing, and before that he wasn't playing well. Do you have any interest in JB, knowing that no one's really going to end up taking him?
I think he's one of the guys where I'll probably roster around 10 to 15%, because you're right, his game does fit here, and the price is right for a guy of his caliber of talent. So, I mean, he could pop here. We'll see.
Well, there's a funny range here at 7,300 and 7,200. It goes Ryan Palmer 73, Beau Hossler 73, then Charlie Hoffman and Patrick Rogers both at 72. I have a feeling, now I could be completely off on this, that Hossler and Rogers might be higher owned than Hoffman and Palmer. And Palmer and Hoffman, both over the past 50 rounds, top 10 in strokes gained ball striking. We know Charlie Hoffman is, compared to these guys, Charlie Hoffman's like old Tiger Woods compared to Patrick Rogers, yet no one wants to use him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a fan of Hoffman this week. I mean, just being that low priced. I mean, with the talent he has, and last year he had a great year. He didn't win, but he had like 72 runner-up finishes. So, I mean, I take that from him this week. The one guy that catches my eye here in the $7,200 range, and my co-host on the pod is going to hate me for that, Brad Messersmith, is Keegan Bradley at $7,200. I mean, off the tee to green, he's great. Everyone knows his troubles with his putter. But the thing about it is he has gained strokes putting here at Torrey in 3 of his last 4 times played. So maybe he knows these greens, or maybe it was pure luck those 3 to 4 weeks. You never know with Keegan Bradley and his putter. But, off the tee, he's one of the longest and straightest hitters out there with that combo of total driving. And I think that's going to be a big deal this week.
Yeah, Keegan Bradley 6th in strokes gained off the tee over the past 50 rounds. I'm not going to be hating on Keegan Bradley. It seems like he's developed into being a more consistent player than he was, let's say, 2 years ago, when it'd be like, oh, let's use Keegan. He really rates out well. He was like the custom model stat darling, almost like Lucas Glover and Luke List are today. And you're just like, oh, God, I played Keegan Bradley. He was the first-round leader, and he missed the cut. Great. Thanks, Keegan. Thanks for showing up. I can be talked into Keegan this week. I'll probably use some of him. And I'm kind of curious about Andrew Landry. He is 8th in strokes gained off the tee. Playoff loser last week in the desert. He has enough length to play here. I think people might go away from him after he kind of melted down a little bit. I kind of like Landry.
Oh, yeah, I definitely wrote him up as one of my plays this week on PowerHourPod.com. I mean, the thing is, last week he showed me a little something. That birdie on 18, the tie, was pretty sick. And it's not like he lost it in the playoff. I mean, he was going fairways and greens, 15-foot birdie putts, 12-foot birdie putts. It just became a putting contest, and Rahm beat him on that 4th hole. And the thing is, what everyone remembers Landry for was his 2016 U.S. Open first-round leader. I think he was in the final group on Sunday with Shane Lowry in 2016. And, Torrey it's not a U.S. Open course right now, but it has some semblances of a U.S. Open course. Very lengthy, narrow fairways on the north course, thickish, rough, small greens. It has that sort of play. So, yes, I'm a fan of Landry this week.
I was looking at the Fantasy National Tournament Simulator, which runs the length of the holes, all the players in them, how they perform on those holes, and it runs the tournament 1,000 times and spits out results. It's not something just to lean on and go with, but it can give you another set of eyes on the same information. And when I looked at it, Jason Day is actually number 1 in the simulator as the best odds to win. Obviously, that's not factoring in a lot of his recent form. It's just more of the player that he's been over the years. It loves Rahm. But another guy that had popped up that I was kind of surprised about was Emiliano Grillo, who gains a ton of strokes off the tee. He's only $7,000. We know he plays well in these longer par 4s, and it's been a while since anyone really hyped up Grillo. But is this the time to go back on now that he's at such a discounted price?
Man, I wasn't even on him until you said that. So, I mean, that's definitely new news to me. I wasn't even looking at it, but I'll take a bigger look here, in the next couple of days to see if I like him. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Do you worry that, without doing the deep dive, just initial thoughts on Grillo being that he's not the longest player, but he does hit a ton of greens in regulation. Like I mentioned, he's very good off the tee. Do you think he has enough of the rest of his game to really compete at this course? Because like a year and a half ago, we were talking about Grillo like he was Patrick Cantlay, as he's the next guy. Then John Rahm came out and just wiped him off the face of the earth, and Grillo started to struggle a little bit. Do you think this is an opportunity that maybe a lot of people have given up on him too early?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, just looking at what he's been doing lately, it looks like his iron game hasn't been that great, but he's gained strokes off the tee, and the last time he lost strokes off the tee was WGC Mexico. It's been about a dozen tournaments. So, accuracy off the tee definitely helps. He's not going to be the longest guy. It does look like he's pretty good at long par 4s as well. 7th in the field in par 4 scoring from 450 to 500 yards the last 50 rounds. So, yeah, I mean, just looking at it a little bit more, I could definitely see Grillo as a play.
Yeah, because initially I really wanted to load up on Luke List down here because we were talking about, hey, ball striking, distance, but like there's only so much Luke List I can use to have him just miss the cut on me and make like a quadruple bogey on a par 5 and be like, oh, thanks. He's like the worst version of Keegan from tournament to tournament. He doesn't have the momentum that he did at certain stretches of the season where he was really clicky. He's just not playing all that well right now. But Chesson Hadley is playing well. People used him a ton last week. He didn't really come through, but he goes from like almost $10,000 into the $6,000 level. I don't care that he's not John Rahm and he hits the ball 350 yards off the tee. I'm going to be using Chesson Hadley here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that price drop of $2,200 for a guy, Web.com Player of the Year, 3-time winner, I think, if I'm not mistaken, last year on the Web.com Tour. Really good fall season. The talent's definitely there for Hadley, and that much savings. I mean, you can't really go wrong with him. And he's been making a ton of birdies. Really good with his long irons. Really good on long par fours. Yeah, I'm in.
The only other guy really from down in this range was Sam Burns, the Jack Nicklaus Award winner from last season. He's in this field. He can strike it off the tee, that's for sure. I know that he's going to be more of a roll of the dice, but he's only $6,600, and I'm having a really tough time coming up with guys from this really lower range. There's 156 players in this field. It's a very difficult course. Like, some of these guys are going to shoot 14 over par, and I don't want to be involved with them. But I think that Burns has enough upside, a lot like Beau Hossler at this track last year, where he can make the weekend at $6,600, and if he does, that's all he really needs to do, and make a few birdies on par fives along the way.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at him again, he's been playing somewhat decent here recently. I mean, the amount of rounds that he's played hasn't been that many, but he's been decent with his approaches or with his off the tee game and his putting here. He's gained a whole bunch of strokes off the tee in his few tour events here, so I can definitely see it. But yeah, this 6,000 range it seems like it's just a huge drop off because of the amount of talent you have above. It just seems like it's a huge fall down here. There's not that many guys that I like in this range. I could see List. I could see Hadley. I like CT Pan a little bit. Maverick McNeely has that Stanford alum thing going. It seems like a lot of Stanford guys play well here. But, I mean, it's barren down here, definitely.
I meant to ask you about Surrey when we were in the $7,000 level. Are you going to be investing in him this week? Because I know there's a lot of DraftKings Euro Tour players that are just salivating at the chance to use him.
Yeah, I mean, the guys who just come straight from the Euro Tour, like, right away, I mean, I'm just not the biggest fan of them yet. I want to see something from them first. I mean, we saw it with Noren last year. I mean, everyone wanted he ranked top 10 in the world, and he comes to America and always shits the bed. So I just want to see these guys do something first when they come over here onto the American Tour.
Although it hasn't necessarily translated to the stat sheet and produced results, I wanted to go over the top 10 in terms of strokes gained ball striking, which is, again, off the tee plus strokes gained approach over the past 24 rounds. And there's one name on this list that is a bit of an outlier. I'm not going to lie to you. So John Rahm's number 1, Hideki's number 2. That's to be expected. Martin Flores is number 3 at $6,600. Then it's Cantlay, Molinari, Garrigus, who's at $6,600, which isn't surprising because that's sort of his bread and butter. JJ Spawn, Bud Cully, Chesson Hadley, and then Jason Day comes in number 10 in that stat. Just beyond it, it's Rose, Charlie Hoffman, Sink, Woodland, JB Holmes, Hoagie, Finau, Streelman, Glover, Landry, Leishman, guys that we all like a lot. But do you have any interest in Garrigus or Flores as potential sleepers just because they rate out well in this one stat? Or is that just like, that could be a bit of noise, I wouldn't worry too much about it?
I mean, you know, if you're mass multi-entering a whole bunch of lineups, you're going to need some people from down here. So, I mean, if you find something like that about Garrigus and Flores, I don't see why it's a bad idea to roster him. I just wouldn't go more than like 10% tops.
All right. Kenny Kim. Check him out on Twitter at KendoVT. Anything to plug, Kenny?
Yeah, just the article on PowerHourPod.com. It's up this week. My course preview, my picks, and my stats. Also, listen to the pod, the Fantasy Golf Degenerative Podcast. It's on iTunes. It's on SoundCloud. All
right, and you can follow me at ThePME on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. My DK cheat sheet is up on DKPlaybook.com, and you can find my entire betting guide up on my Facebook page sometime on Wednesday afternoon with head-to-heads, top 10s, top 20s, winners, top 5s, all that fun stuff. No first-round leaders this week, unfortunately, with the 2 courses. I just don't like getting into multiple courses when it comes to first-round leaders. It's too much information for me to process. I got enough going on as it is. But you can subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience anywhere where you can download podcasts, free, uncut, on demand whenever you want it, and watch the video version up on the DraftKings YouTube page. And this week, with so much extra Tiger money flooding in, it is the perfect time to become a member at FantasyNational.com. There are demo videos up there right now if you're interested in using it and seeing what these tools offer. Just watch the 1-minute video, step by step, walk you through it, telling you how it can be beneficial for constructing your lineups on DFS sites. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck this week. I'll see you next time.